Welcome to the 359. I'm Roger Chang.
I'm Ben Fox Rubin.
I'm Joni Salzman.
Is Zuck sorry enough? Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg went on an apology tour starting last night, breaking his silence over the Cambridge Analytica data scandal after 5 days of just nothing. So he acknowledged that the mistakes led to a breach of trust with his users and vowed to do better. That sounds very similar. Joan, you actually had a chance to watch the CNN interview. Like, what did you think when you watched it? Like, was he contrite enough?
Well, one word that he said in that interview and some other interviews that he did after his own post, his own post about it, was he actually said the word apology. So he said that he was sorry, which goes farther than what he did when he was in full control of what he was talking about and could edit it. He didn't go that far in his original statement. And when, watching the CNN interview in particular, where you got to see video of him, he got emotional at the end of it when he was asked about, what having children means for how he's stewarding Facebook, which is affecting, except for the fact that he's the most powerful person in the world,
Right.
and a billionaire who's enriched himself partly because of these sort of advertising tools that he's given to
Now, I'm curious,
developers.
saying apology, saying I'm sorry. Like, I think the question everyone's asking today is, is he sorry for what has happened, or is he sorry that he got caught,
Or that his stock tanked?
Or stock tank? I mean,
Right.
What exactly was he apologetic for?
He apologized for the fact that it happened.
Okay.
But I think that that's a really good. I think the fact that it happened 2 years ago and they didn't do anything about it is the reason why a lot of people are saying, "Are you sorry that it happened, or are you sorry that you got caught?"
Yeah. So there's plenty more to come. Rich Nieva has a nice breakdown of all this drama and Zuck presenting this, his pitch to the world for a better Facebook. Next up, want to talk about a CNET exclusive. We would first report that Huawei, the world's third largest smartphone maker, lose Best Buy as a retailer, and that's a big deal because none of the U.S. carriers sell its phones, and Best Buy was one of the few places that you could actually physically see a Huawei product.
Okay, so how popular was this at Best Buy? Do you know?
That's unclear. The big flagship phone they just launched, the Mate 10 Pro. Literally just launched weeks ago in the U.S. through these retailers. Best Buy and Amazon are like sort of the two big ones. I think B&H and Newegg are the other retailers that also offer it. But obviously, Best Buy was the big physical channel that you can go and see these phones. So I don't think they were doing that well. Huawei had told me sort of their pre-orders were looking pretty good, but just the fact that these phones won't be in any physical stores is a big loss for the company.
Did you get any impression as to why Best Buy was doing this, or was this something that may have been coming from Huawei?
It's unclear. It's definitely, so from my sources, said that it was Best Buy's decision to end the relationship. No reasons were given. But obviously, there's this backdrop of all this political concerns. The heads of the FBI, NSA, CIA have all said that they feel that Huawei phones present a risk. So there's that backdrop. And then we've had the reports that Verizon and AT&T were going to sell these phones, but ended up backing out because of political pressure.
Yeah.
All right. So lastly, Etsy CEO Josh Silverman had an exclusive interview with Ben Fox Rubin. And Ben, so lay out what exactly is going on with Etsy.
So Etsy had a really tough year last year. They went through 2 rounds of layoffs, but Silverman seems to be doing a pretty good job riding the ship. Revenue's up. People seem to be going to the site more often, and they're going to be doing a big sale, a week-long sale.
Their own version of Prime Day, right?
Basically, their own version of Prime Day to remind people to go back to Etsy, and they're trying to inject that idea of like specialty retail and special retail more into your life more often.
All right. For more on these stories, check us out at CNET. I'm Roger Chang.
I'm Ben Fox Rubin.
I'm Joni Salzman.
Thanks for listening.
Who's going to participate in Special Day? Is it called Special Day?
No. What's it called?
You wrote the story.
It's just it's like a
it's called the
Etsy World.
No, yeah, it's the World of Etsy sales event.
World of Etsy sales event.
It doesn't really roll off the tongue.
It doesn't sound like Prime Day. It's not as strong as Prime Day, but
they definitely still need to work on their marketing.
Yeah, but it's the way that he described it to me was that people regularly go to Etsy maybe once a year. Like their regular customers will come once a year. This is a good way to remind people that you can inject special more often into your life. That's like almost a direct quote from the CEO.
I'm pretty
by
sure
having something like
I'm pretty
this.
sure we bought like a little baby Superman cape and glasses for
Yeah.
Connor from Etsy.
There's and they're hoping that with a lot of the Amazons and Walmarts of the world really taking over a lot more of the commodity goods,
Yeah.
that they can actually become much more relevant because they sell like 50 million items, artsy items and handmade stuff that you wouldn't be able to normally find anywhere else. One other interesting element that he told me about was Handmade at Amazon, which Amazon launched 2 years ago. He said has not had an impact on the business. And this was really being pitched as a potential quote unquote Etsy killer. And after 2 years, it really hasn't had as much of an impact, I guess, as some people may have expected.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Like when I read through the story and heard the mention of Handmade, that was like the first time I remembered Handmade since the announcement.
Yeah, it's Amazon gets into a lot of different businesses, and there's an immediate reaction to that, whether it's healthcare or banking or what have you. And sometimes that reaction is an overreaction, especially in the stock market. And Etsy still exists. They have not been killed by Amazon by any stretch. So yeah.
All right. So I mean, do we have any questions yet, or should we?
Well, I think that we should have a little bit of a conversation here to kind of to drum up a little more interest in the Zuckerberg situation.
Yeah.
How much do we feel is really on his shoulders as an individual versus the company? Do we think he's taking the right action now, or is it too little too late? And that's coming from me.
I think ultimately this just appeared to be very lax interest in protecting user data.
Damage control.
So it's just they were not, whether it's from Zuckerberg or anybody beneath Zuckerberg, everybody on down, I think is somewhat culpable or liable in the situation that you take 50 million user data from 50 million different users, and it just ends up in a place that I'm sure a lot of those users weren't really happy with. So they should do a lot more, and they said that they were going to do a lot more to try to do a better job protecting user data.
I mean, I would say, if you're going to point the finger to someone, it is definitely Zuckerberg. I mean, he owns whatever. He has that super majority control over the company. He is the face of the company. And it's still, I think it still bothers a lot of people that it took 5 days for him to finally come out in public and say something. He just sort of kind of deferred any kind of response to his lieutenants, right? And like lower level lieutenants.
And he even, like, when asked about testifying before Congress, he kind of deferred on that too, in the sense that he said, like, I'd be happy to do it if I'm the best person for it. And it's like,
oh, that's some hedging right there.
That's some hedging, especially considering, well, you're the CEO of this company, you founded. How are you not the best person to address these things? And if you're not the best person, why isn't this your business? Like, why isn't it your interest to know these things?
Right. And yes, and the calls, Mark Warner, both in the U.S., in the U.K., just there are tons of calls for Zuckerberg to appear before government hearings. He hasn't, but he's never done it. No. He's usually sent a general counsel, or he's sent other lieutenants. So it's I think a lot of people do want to hear him speak before Congress, and actually testify about some of what's been going on at Facebook.
Right. And what's interesting is that this is not at all the first scandal that Facebook has faced over the past 2 years. That's been pretty well documented. And for whatever reason, I mean, Joan, maybe you have a better idea on this. For whatever reason, this one's blown up much more considerably in the the general public, and people are paying a lot more attention to this one as opposed to some of the other issues that have come up.
I mean, personally, to be frank, I think that it's because of Brexit and the election of Trump that people aren't are interested, are pissed off about it. You know, like even the Cambridge Analytica itself, like that. Vice wrote about that more than a year ago, before the election. You know, like this topic has been written about, and the fact that developers had this level of access, and then that level of access was shut down, that was written about years ago. I think it's that people, partly because Facebook has been exploited the way it has to sow divisions among people, we're all in a state of hyper sensitivity about these things and feeling threatened. I think a lot of people are feeling under threat, and that's why they're lashing out more against Facebook for things when they've had these problems in the past.
And Facebook is now being viewed much more as, being presented as like a weapon or a political tool, as opposed to like just a fun place to share
a community, as Zuckerberg
a community,
likes to
share
it.
baby pics, cat pics, whatever. This this is completely separate in many ways from the Russian propaganda that was being done during the election.
Right.
I mean, the other thing is it's also just looking at how they handle the data, and they just sort of the idea that they kind of trusted these third parties with our data to do the right thing and responsibly delete all that stuff was, I mean, kind of naive or stupid. Worst case, stupid. Best case, naive.
Just
I mean,
lax.
yeah, it just doesn't.
lazy.
I mean, that's part of the more fundamental
Right.
problem with Facebook and how it treats data, because it, as much as they give lip service to protecting our privacy and making sure our data is safe, like clearly by their actions they're showing that that's not really the priority.
Right.
Let's jump into the chat. We got some good conversation going. Oscar, he says, the apology is useless. If Snowden's info didn't make the masses budge, why should this? Continuing on, I want to express Srinjoy's strong words. Zuck's 2018 resolution to work at Facebook isn't
Right.
going well. The board of directors should fire this useless
Well, they can't.
worker.
Yeah, they
Ooh.
They
can't
literally
actually.
cannot.
Yeah,
It's
he
He's
owns
very much
like
in control.
he owns a massive amount of the majority of the shares. Like he literally could not be fired.
Obviously, I just
Yeah.
thought that the strong language was.
No,
Yeah.
sorry, Stranger. That's I mean, yeah, he's
I'm
stuck
sure
there.
he's not the only
gonna
one.
be the CEO as long as he wants to be the CEO.
Yeah, it's more likely that Zuckerberg will be like, you know what? I'm just pulling the plug. Facebook is dead, than for him to not be the CEO of Facebook and it continue to exist.
It just like it just ends.
Right.
Oh my God, that would be so wonderful.
What-
It's like
Except,
see
like-
the sun again.
Except like, entire it's really fun to think about and talk about because it's like this alternate universe, bizarro world mentality.
Right.
Because it's such a part of
'Cause
our
of-
lives, but because it's such a part of our lives, and also it's an economic force beyond just itself. Like how many people's livelihoods depend on
Yeah.
Facebook as a platform?
That's a fair point.
It would have a lot of repercussions.
And I mean, I talked about this on an interview, like this whole delete Facebook hashtag. I mean, it's easy to get outraged and share delete Facebook, but it's a lot harder to actually do it because you do. I mean, I rely on Facebook for keeping tabs on my friends and family. Like I'm
That's-
so kind of hooked into it.
Yeah.
It would be tough to give it up.
It's the only channel that I'm in touch with certain folks,
Yeah.
partly from overseas. So it wouldn't make any sense for me to delete Facebook because it would basically be like cutting off my nose at this point. So
That's you, me, and a lot of people, though, Ben.
Yeah.
It's become a very helpful communication device. It's also become a poisonous billboard.
Well, I think that also what's interesting is how there has been this mental shift, I think, in everyone's minds in Facebook and outside of Facebook, people that use it. Whereas, people, I mean, how many times have we seen over the years these studies being like, using social media like Facebook makes you feel bad about yourself. And we're all like,
Yeah.
ha ha ha, I'm doing stuff that makes me feel bad about myself. My mental health is degrading right now, and I'm keep going to do it. It's so funny. But now that we're realizing the repercussions, not only to ourselves, but also to democracies
Yep.
and geopolitics and security, people are like, wait a second, this isn't so hilarious anymore. Like, you know what I mean?
I mean, do
Oh,
you think
absolutely.
do you think this marks the turning point for folks to actually take a more sober look at Facebook then?
I don't know. But that's the thing. It's really good at being addictive. Like,
Right.
they're really
Right.
good at it. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. And it fits very much into the broader conversation that we've been having about, are these tech giants, do they have too much power? Are they causing more problems than good? This filters very directly into that whole conversation too.
Let's jump back into the chat. Coming in from Abdul. Has anyone looked into the traffic to Facebook recently? I think this recent news must have affected it. I think I saw something yesterday where they lost like twice the amount of Tesla in the last couple of days or something like that.
Oh,
Well,
you
that's
mean
the stock price.
Yeah.
Stock
Oh,
price. I don't know
stock
about
price. Yeah,
actual
yeah.
foot traffic, but
Uh,
their net worth is certainly taking a hit.
Yeah, I mean the stock's definitely been hit, but I mean I don't know, it's that's such a near term indicator. Like
yeah.
I feel like folks like Zuckerberg who are in kind of the billions, like that's kind of a blip for them, right? That's the
True,
day-to-day-
true.
That's
But do we have any numbers as far
Well,
as user and
not
like
s-
actual fall off?
Not since the Cambridge Analytica scandal, because that's only happened in the last
Yeah.
week. We do know that in the last quarterly report, Zuckerberg, and this is following on, so at the end of last year, Zuckerberg said, hey, we're going to focus on making our platform better, and we're going to spend millions of dollars on it, and it means we might not be making as much money in the short term, to focus on what they call time well spent, like having less of this, like, no value engagement that keeps you on Facebook for a long time, but doesn't mean that you're happy while you're doing it. So with this focus on time well spent in the last quarter, the most recent period, Zuckerberg said that people aren't spending as much time on Facebook because of that initiative. I imagine that all this discussion and noise about how people are disappointed in Facebook and how they don't get value out of it, I imagine that's only exacerbating that trend, if that is a trend. So
right, or more
people are using it more?
going on it. Yeah,
I don't know.
Because sometimes that does happen where
Yeah.
it becomes so top of mind that people just end up going on Facebook more often.
Yeah.
Or they go on Facebook
Or
to
they hear
complain
something.
about Facebook.
They hear something bad about Facebook, and then they immediately go on.
Or the only way that you
possible.
can see Zuckerberg's response after 5 days of this
on
is to go on Facebook.
That's
at
true.
first.
You have to log into Facebook to
Yeah.
see his response.
Yeah. Well, luckily they report their monthly active users and daily active users on a quarterly basis.
Yeah.
So we will be able to continue to track that. That's not something that's like hidden or anything like that. So we'll get an impression. But I think you guys would agree that, the delete Facebook movement, if it is a movement, is probably only going to have a short-term impact. That's at least how it seems to me.
I mean, I think why delete Uber, why that movement was so effective was because there was an easy substitute. Like you can hop the lift, and your experience really wouldn't change that much. I mean,
The
essentially
drivers were similar.
the drivers were pretty much the same.
Yeah.
There isn't an alternative to Facebook, right? That
has the same network
but-
effect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, Joan. But to some effect, there are lots of alternatives, and we did talk about
There
a
are.
lot of them yesterday.
Yeah.
And that's the thing; it's hard to take it seriously when it's like, but I need Facebook. But it really has innovated the way a lot of us do communicate long distance with group. And for that, I still sing its praises, but it has been infiltrated. So it is maybe time to start looking into some
Well, and I know,
of the alternatives.
One of the popular alternatives is Instagram, which is
Right.
And,
owned by
and-
Facebook. So.
and WhatsApp.
Which is
Yeah.
also owned by Facebook.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Let's take a few more in the chat. We got a little bit of time left. Coming in from Matthew Datcher. Yes, it's the power that these companies have. Have companies always had this kind of power over our lives, or has this only happened in the past decade? I'm thinking that might be a bit of a sarcastic statement. I don't think that it's only a new concept in the past decade. But how has mass
Very hard to
communication
say.
innovations been impacted by it? Maybe
It's gone from, so the internet has caused this titanic shift between like a gatekeeper model where there were only 3 broadcast stations, there was like 2 newspapers in every city, and there wasn't this like free flow of communication and information that we have now with the internet. But because we have such concentration in very few companies like Google and Facebook being, representing the vast majority of advertising money on the internet, we have a concentration of power without the same sort of regulation that those gatekeepers had in the past. The gatekeepers in the past, they had the FTC overseeing them with much more scrutiny than the FTC would oversee a Reddit or a Facebook or a Google today.
And it's because of that ad model. Like Facebook and Google, these companies are designed to extract as much data from you as possible. And so in that respect, I don't think no company knows as much about you as a Google or a Facebook. And companies in the past surely didn't have that kind of control over you because they didn't know your preferences. They didn't know the fact that you liked, I don't know, Thomas the Train cartoons or something.
Because you tell them.
Right.
That's
you
one of the
willingly
things.
give it to them.
Because
You willingly give it to them.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Facebook has developed this program where you are indicted to want to volunteer more information because you get somewhat rewarded for it. You get more relevant things passed towards you, and then you find common ground with new people.
Right.
Or you take part in like fun little quizzes.
Yeah, exactly.
that end up
That end up being used to target you for political ads. So yeah.
Jeez, what a world we've built. We got a little bit of time for a few more. Ryan Williams is pointing out the obvious one is just signing up for things, terms and agreements, being more cognizant of what you're engaging
Yeah,
with,
actually
checking
reading
your
those
sources.
terms of services.
Wouldn't that be a beautiful world that
Yeah.
we would all live in? Not to say you're not 110% right with that, but let's get real. How many people actually do that?
Yeah.
We got to think about other. We don't have to think. People really should just be more responsible and more accountable. For
Although
their-
realistically, how many people read those terms of service?
I mean, that's the thing. They're all so long.
and
It's
they're
not-
long and the full
I mean,
legalese.
and that's, yeah, exactly. It's not like companies make it easy for you to know what you're giving up, and they also don't make it easy for you to control that if you have the ambition to do. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
there's no easy way to find, even on Facebook, like it's not an easy way to turn these things off. You have to know there has to be a scandal for there to be stories to tell you where to look.
Yeah.
And for the company to be
Absolutely.
like, oh, maybe we should make it easier for
And
you
most
to
of
turn
the
off
time,
these
most of the
permissions.
time you're not thinking about that sort of thing.
Exactly,
So you're not
yeah.
looking for it. And it's I mean, I finally went and turned off a bunch of these things. I didn't realize. I mean, it's not a super hard process to do it, but like it definitely takes extra steps. You have to know what to look for. And like, yeah, if it weren't for a scandal like this, we would have just sort of like
Right.
unwittingly just kept going with these apps that have hooks into all of our data.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Datch points out that hang on, no, I misspoke for a second. Let's take another one from Ryan Williams. If you delete Facebook, does that mean deleting your Google account, Twitter, etc.? I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but what happens when Facebook goes away? Who becomes the next crowned, most popular, most traffic area that's going to inevitably be infiltrated and poisoned and damaged as well?
I don't think it's a
How do we
foregone
future-proof this?
Yeah, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion
Yeah.
that Facebook's going anywhere.
No.
Yeah.
Total hypothetical.
Then the hypothetical.
But if it wasn't to go away tomorrow, would Twitter rise up? How would Twitter
No.
get broken? How do we avoid this going forward?
No, I
That's a
think
good question.
Well, I think in order for Facebook to go through this hypothetical where it goes away, like something else would have to take its place, something new. Like I don't think Instagram necessarily replaces what Facebook is, neither does Twitter. They all are social networks, but they all do things a little bit differently.
Totally.
They offer different kinds of experiences. So I feel like there needs to be like a better mousetrap that beats out Facebook, just like Facebook beat out MySpace and Friendster. Am I missing one of those?
Friendster.
And yeah, like there was that cycle where these social networks like,
AOL.
rose and then they fell.
AIM to an extent.
Well,
When Facebook brought in the direct peer-to-peer messaging, I think that kind of, because AIM, Sternjoy points out, AIM really was the first big step, like beyond like
in
the
terms of networking people together.
yeah,
Yeah. Or ICQ.
or ICQ, but
Yeah.
AIM became a household name.
Yeah, that's true.
In a larger scale than ICQ did.
Yeah, when AIM finally ended, people were kind of sad, nostalgic about it.
Yeah,
I don't think anyone cared about ICQ.
that was a new program though. We'd never seen anything like
Yeah.
a direct messenger system. But Datch did point out that Facebook is popular because it's the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
It became the path of least resistance for hackers, for spammers, for this, that, and the
people
other
to
thing.
use it. Yeah, and they did that very much
Good
intentionally.
and bad people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, there's a good reason why 2 billion people have Facebook accounts.
Another expansion on the thought is, as far as information spills go, Facebook is small change compared to the likes of Yahoo and Equifax. Do we really think that's true?
Well, I think that in terms of the scale that we know of, like right now we know of 50 million people, but you know, Zuckerberg said they're going to be looking into thousands of apps that had the same opportunities that Cambridge Analytica and that Cambridge researcher
Yeah,
had.
I'm sure there are other apps out there just sort of sitting in your account that have hooks into and that connect to other friends. And granted, Facebook did shut off some of this access, but there's still a lot of data flowing around from those older apps from 2 or 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm. We only have a couple minutes left, so let's go quick through a couple of these. Srinjoy had another good concept, as he always does. How about completely change the way Facebook makes money? I'm thinking low-key crypto miner on the website, not the ones that screw up the CPU. Will that be fairer than targeted ads? And if Facebook dares to make crypto mining step, it might legitimize that form of currency. He's got very good points here.
Yeah.
It
But-
would never happen.
but-
It's interesting. but it would
Facebook
never
currently
happen.
blocks crypto currency ads,
Yeah.
yet it won't block political propaganda.
Well, it's working on the political stuff,
Yeah.
and it makes
Yeah.
a lot of money on political ads. So I think the intention is to improve the political ads as opposed to just barring them completely. Facebook is part of the duopoly with Google, where like that's how they make their money. They dominate digital advertising. So I don't see that changing at all. That's how their
Yeah.
entire business model is set up.
Mhm.
It's
I mean,
not
that's-
on selling
yeah.
Oculus headsets.
I think it's a nice thought about using cryptocurrency, but yeah, that'll never
And
happen.
Zuckerberg said yesterday, if there would be, he addressed the idea of like, would there be a subscription Facebook, because the advertising is the fuel that gives bad actors a reason to be there. Like if you can make, well, except for Russian interference, because then your end game isn't making money, it's disrupting geopolitical order. But most of the bad actors,
Trolls of the highest order.
right,
Yes.
most of
We
the
work
bad
for free.
actors are there just to make money, and so that's the fuel that drives all this stuff. And so the question is, if you take away that fuel, that will suffocate some of the bad actors. But he made the point that it's important for Facebook to be not necessarily in first world countries, but in places where internet access isn't as easy to get, that not having that barrier to entry, that it being a model that is extremely cheap or free for people is important.
It is an interesting idea.
That's a fair point.
That's a fair point.
That like, would the better mousetrap be the anti-Facebook or the next thing after Facebook? Could it be a subscription-based model? Obviously, it would hit a different demographic, as you suggested, but that could be something interesting that somebody else might want to look into.
I feel like the dilemma with that is, these sites these companies all have one goal early on, is for like massive ramp up of users.
Yeah, scale.
Exactly, it's all about scale. And when you put in a subscription model in there, you're automatically just hurting yourself in terms of potential growth there, right? Like you can't get to that scale for that hype and for that for the startup money when you've got the subscription model. So I mean, yeah, it's theoretically Facebook could do it now that they have the scale, but I don't know how many people would stick around if they had to pay whatever $5.
And what would that look like? Would that be in completely separate Facebook, or where you get
Facebook Pro?
Yeah, Facebook awesome.
Facebook Plus.
Yeah.
Okay, we're coming down to the end here. Let's switch gears real quick and talk about Huawei. Lohengrin, I think that's how I pronounce that name. Apologies if I screwed that up. My question, should the USA at large ban Huawei phones?
I mean,
didn't they already with routers?
They do have a ban on telecommunications equipment. Companies are basically forbidden from working with Huawei in terms of their back-end equipment. The phones, I mean, they have almost essentially have done it in with their comments. They haven't. There's no official ban, but if the NSA, CIA, and FBI all say like you probably shouldn't be buying these phones, that's a real issue, right? And so, yes, I think that Huawei already struggled with their presence in the U.S. and losing Best Buy is it's bad, but I mean they were already kind of in a bad situation already.
In a difficult position.
Yeah.
For anybody out there that's watching this that has a Huawei phone, should they be concerned? Like, should they feel like they have spyware on their phones or something like that?
I mean, that's always been the conspiracy theory out there. I don't know. I can't say with 100% certainty that they're completely safe. I know they're well reviewed. I know our colleagues on the reviews team have generally given these phones pretty good reviews.
And they're a known brand.
Yeah, they're a known brand. They're a known brand, around the world. But there's always that lingering, we don't know, and that's kind of the issue. And for the U.S., that's big enough to have stopped them from coming in here in a kind of meaningful way.
I think that is a fine place to end for the week. We spent a lot of time talking about Facebook, and I think we're going to spend a whole lot more time talking about Facebook. But that is it for us. Thursday is our Friday, and we'll have to wrap it up here, and we'll see you again next week. Roger, you want to take us out?
Yeah, if you liked anything you saw or heard here, check us out on CNET. Our podcast is also available on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, FeedBurner, Google Play Music, and the Amazon Echo. See y'all next week.
See y'all next week.
Bye.